everybody? Great job, Jeff. Yeah.
So the other reason that we wanted to introduce this idea of connecting pipes to the system is because when we started looking at how to build a GIS or a pipeline asset management system from well tip to meter tip and everything in between, we started the big sequence of the way we do pipeline data management. PODS traditionally has been linear referencing. Right? Linear referencing, we normally find that in the midstream space, large linear pipelines. A lot of us kind of refer to linear referencing as supporting for station. And that's actually just a very small part of it. Linear referencing itself is how we model pipe data, pretty data, when it's really dense. It's called dense data sets. Right? If you think about it from just a pure GIS perspective, if I had a pipeline line, and I put every kind of attribute I needed on that line, the columns would be 1,000 wide. Every time one of those attributes changed, I have to break it apart. But eventually it would be unmanageable. I have thousands of little segments. So linear referencing as a concept allows me to do this dense data set. Now, what linear referencing lacks is how all these little routes connect together. What all the pipes that produce the pressure system. So if anybody who try to use linear referencing, when I say inside the fence, or even as mentioned this morning in gathering, it's difficult. Once you don't have the next data set, linear referencing seems too weighty, too heavy to model that data. So we set up to create a system where we can manage pipe data from one side of this to the other. And then what we came up with, we mentioned was, okay, we want to have a single data geodatabase, everything we want. And I want to have multiple GIS systems just because I have to do these assets. And if I'm doing linear referencing, well, then I'll use these pipeline referencing tools. But if I need that connectivity, then I'll add this utility network to the mix. And so when PODS first combined the pipeline referencing and the geodatabase, we were sort of missing this other little stool. And what the group really set out to do is to build this kind of connectivity into the model. Now, very similar to what we did with APR. APR had a core set of features. It didn't mention pipe or valve or T's or assemblies. It was just simply a simple set of feature classes and tables that I can use to enable referencing. And you'll find these tables now in the POD 7. Right? So that means if you're implementing POD 7, you'll find the basic infrastructure to do as we do referencing in that core. So we want to emulate that same pattern for the utility network. So the utility network, very similar to APR, has a core set of feature classes that needs to operate. And there's only 5. When I first brought this model up, I said, never going to work. We're never going to be able to put all the stuff we have in the 5 feature classes. Well, it comes to find out that we try to trace these long networks and iterate over millions of events, you have to have a simple structure. You can't go out and query hundreds of tables to get this done. So the utility network is cooler. It has 5 feature classes: devices, lines, junctions, assemblies, and things called subnetwork that I'll talk about later. But this is really, if we take away all the complexities of the data model, from a connectivity point of view, this is how we do it. And what this allows us to do is create what we call domains. And so what we created is a PODS domain. And allows it to sit and participate with other domains from other industries. So the same geodatabase I could have, or I could have an electric network, or any of the other types of models that we create templates for. So PODS now have a single network data set. And all these different things can live in the same geodatabase. And so what the task of the working group was, like I said, to rearrange the deck chairs, is to go through the model and figure out, okay, these tables need to be linear referenced, and we showed you, so leave them alone. These tables somehow make their way into either devices, lines, junctions, or assemblies. So we scroll the model, figure out what tables need to be part of this, and move them over and let the rest of the model. So how do we integrate the linear referencing world with this new utility network? So if you've been exposed to the APRs, you know there's a center line. And on top of that center line, you create the networks or the routes. And on top of that, we place the linear or components. Well, when we introduce the core tables of the utility network, basically what happens is we take the center line feature class from the pipeline reference and we throw it aside. We use the pipe from the utility network as the center line leading reference. So pipe can now be mapped anywhere, whether it's linear reference or not. Inside the fence, it can go vertically, and where I'm linear referencing, I simply put it on top of the pipes that I'm interested in. Right? So now I can have linear referencing to connected pipes, back into linear referencing again, and have fully connected network. So how do we deliver this? What is PODS building? Well, because the utility network not only has the structure, but also has business rules, we need a way to deliver this so you can load it into your enterprise database. And that delivery method is called an asset package. And an asset package basically takes all the structure of the definition of those different elements, plus the rules of how things are applied together, and expresses them in a way that you can load that. So we have these different domains, and inside of those domains, we now have the actual feature classes. So this is what you get with an asset package, and there are ESRI tools to load this up. But when we look inside of each of these different feature classes, there's a couple of required fields that need to be there. We've added these to the PODS model. So global IP, this thing called asset group and asset type. This is how we specify when we get into the device conjunction line, what type of device it is, what type of conjunction it is, what type of line it is, some association statuses, and the normal editor tracking. That's really what we're requiring at the core. Now, if we open up that tier, look at it from a pipeline perspective, devices represent things that control the flow of the product. Valves, pumps, compressors, meters. Junctions are how pipes are joined together. They don't necessarily control the flow, but allow us to join the connectivity line. T's, Y's, elbows, reducers would all be examples of junctions. Then we have the pipeline lines themselves. They represent how these points of the device and junctions are connected together. And then we have a new concept called assemblies. What an assembly is an object that allows it to contain other objects. So if I build, for example, a pig tracker or launcher receiver assembly, I can place that one object in a data model and then put underneath it all the pipes and small connectors and elbows to make up that launch receiver assembly. Containers can contain other containers. They can go and be big as, say, a compressor station or a pump station. It allows us a way to represent that complex element on the JS as a single point, but inside of it have all those details and connected attributes that we need to represent that digital tool. And then the last one is a subnetwork. And basically think of this as a dynamic hierarchy. So in the old relational models or the old hierarchy models, we would say, hey, this piece of pipe is part of the system and subsystem, it's owned by this operator. What these subnetworks do is they allow us to define tiers in the data model based on the physical devices. So for example, one of the tiers I might create is an isolation tier. Okay, so what isolates pipe? Well, valves that I can remotely control isolate pipes. So once I place two valves, I automatically get an isolation tier in my data model. Pumps and compressors can control, say, the pressure tier. So if I place a pump, everything downstream of that, compressor, everything downstream of that, can now be in that tier. Right? So it allows us to use the devices to build a kind of pipe based on the connectivity of the objects and some business logic built into the model. Now, this is kind of a really interesting part because this is how we were able to take all these different tables of information in PODS and represent in these core feature classes. So devices have what we call an asset group. These are actually pulled right out of the model, so these are actually what we call in the model. So devices are valves, pumps, compressors, meters, regulators, junctions, assemblies, and lines, which is the sample data there. Right? So this is the top of the hierarchy. And in the geodatabase, there's a concept called subtyping. So we create a feature class and identify a column as a subtype and allows us to build additional rules based on those different types. So once you pick, say, a valve, as the asset group, you drop down the asset type. We have different types of valves: block, check, control, lead, global. So this allows us to sort of start building this intelligence into the model, because now we're building rules around how different things can connect based on their asset group and asset type. And so one of the things that's kind of a change from a PODS perspective is because we're building rules around business rules around how data goes into the GIS, we've actually started to define what these columns are, what these domains are. We used to just give you a blank model and create your own domains. Everybody had different opinions of what those domains should be. But now when you look at an asset package to you, there's rules connected to these domains. And then if you want to add or change them, you can change these domains. They're configurable, but you have to edit and add the rules that are appropriate. So when you download this asset package and give it a try, we'll have some initial views of what this looks like. Now, as we mentioned earlier this morning, this has already gone through a bit of a litmus test. So as we'll hear this afternoon from one of the folks, they wanted to do this. This model wasn't available. They said, hey, we'll take on the role and responsibility of giving this a try. We'll build this rule base with ESRI, and we'll donate that work back to PODS. So this is not only done from a PODS perspective, but also done in the lens of a project. So it's already gone through that sort of phase of testing it out, kicking the tires, make sure it works. Doesn't mean that this has to be the way it is forever, but it's a great start and has been tested once for the conversion from PODS. Now, the other nice thing about this is that the utility network, as far as an editing operation, just uses core ESRI tools. So not only are you in the environment that you will really be in from a GIS perspective, but you also have access to all the other different configurations and helper tools and all the other toolboxes that you might need to draw these files and get into the GIS. So we didn't build a separate environment for this, it just lives within ArcGIS Pro. Now, from a rules perspective, there's a couple of different rules that we can start to apply to the database and start leveraging some of this connected pipeline business logic. One would be a calculated rule. So it's like place an object or edit an object in the database, some type of calculation would fire, and edit would automatically populate attributes from it. So if, for example, I have a valve, that valve has a diameter. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I put that valve as a 12-inch pipe? Valve automatically became 12-inch. Right? To keep that data consistency in the model. So we can calculate sort of calculation rules. The other is constraint rules. I think this is probably the most powerful part of the utility network. If it's set up correctly, it allows us to only put in valid data into the model. So a constraint rule would say, hey, if I have a 12-inch pipe and a 14-inch pipe, then reduce it in the middle. That's a rule to constrain that value, right? So these values, these rules can go as complicated as you want, but the whole idea is to sort of be the gatekeeper. So as data is entered into the system, it has to follow a certain specification to be able to add to the model. And you can add it, you can validate it, it will tell you where the errors are. You can go back and fix them later. It doesn't stop the data going in, but it does tell you where data in the model violates your business rules. So these are the different 5 types of rules that you can build in a utility network. You have junction rules, junction to edge, junction, containment, and another thing we call structural attachments. These can be added to the pipe. So as you're building rules and rule base, these are the 5 different categories that you can pick from. And this is a screenshot from the model that we're going to produce. So we have, I'm going to say, over 1,000 different rules already populated in these different categories for you to follow basic pipeline characteristics. Now, when you add data to the utility network, what you'll get is this utility network object that points out where edits have been made from dirty areas. If I add a piece of pipe, I need to validate it against the rules. Or if you have data and you run the rule base against it, it'll tell you if you have any point to the polygon errors in the rule base. It'll give you a list and you go back and fix it. So this is kind of the traffic clock that allows data in and out of the enterprise to your database. One of the things that utility network does really well is handle large data sets. One of the things that it doesn't do so well is large bad data sets. So we've had a bunch of customers say, hey, we're just going to load everything and fix it over time, right? And you got 10,000 errors in your data. Not the best approach. You need to really kind of think about the data conversion, either relaxing some of the rules temporarily or looking at automated scripts to fix this data and get it down to the reasonable number of errors in the data set. So that's kind of one of my pointers about using utility. I'm like, oh, just load a bunch of garbage in there and expect it to do its magic. It'll just continue to trip over all those errors and just trying to do its work. So here's an example of an edge junction rule, right? For this case, a T. What types of T's can be connected to what types of pipelines? Same junction rule for edges, right? In this case, it's really tied to the devices, how the devices are tied to the pipelines. Something like a valve is going to have different characteristics than a T or a tap. We want to be able to catch those with these different rules about edge, point edge rulings. Now, to get a little more complicated, as we start looking at junction rules. So here we have some rules that say, hey, I can not only just connect points to lines, but I can actually associate points together. So how many times have you tried to connect your pipeline and you just don't know what's in the middle? And we don't ever want to just draw false pipes that we don't know about. So one of the powers of the utility network is this ability to associate points together to form connectivity. And there's rules about what types of points can be connected to what type of other points, the rule base. So here we've got a gathering line, we connect to a fitting, which connects to a leader, which connects to another fitting, then onto a transmission line, and we build that association connection without having to draw a pipe in the middle between those pipelines. This is a junction edge rule. So what types of fittings or what types of objects can be between two types of pipelines? So in this case, if I'm transitioning from a transmission line to a station line, you have some type of fitting in the middle. And then finally, when we start looking at containment, right, I have a pump station. It now contains a number of objects, maybe some meters, some pumps, and some valves. All of those have connectivity together. So underlying the model, as I'm tracing down the network, we'll be able to discover all these objects. But on my map, I can still represent that assembly as a single point, right? So I can hide the complexities of what's inside of the system using these containment rules, display them on our GIS, and behind the scenes, we will open up these containers and see what's inside. Here's an example of those calculation rules, right? As I connect this valve to this transmission line, reach into the transmission line and grab the line ID, and use the valve name to build an automated valve. This is just an out-of-the-box calculation tool. You can think of thousands of these that you can use as we're editing data to make it much easier for your editors to complete and make consistency in the data model. This is really important. We start talking about master data. Right? When we talk about how do we connect to SAP or Maximo or other systems in the organization, we have to connect to that. We have calculation rules built for the data model. As editors are placing these devices onto the lines, they can automatically calculate and build these expressions that allow us to connect systems together. Here's what the calculation rule we know about. In this case, we're connecting valve with certain specifications of the pipeline. The second case, that valve specification is incompatible with the transmission line we're trying to connect it to, we'll automatically reject it. However, right at the editor can't even connect that valve to that transmission line because we have a rule that says only valves of similar pressure ratings can be connected. Now, sometimes we don't know that data ahead of time. So sometimes they go ahead and replace those rules, replace those objects, and haven't actually filled all the attribute data out. We allow that to happen. As soon as they update that value for that pressure rating, then we would go ahead and flag that and fail because that valve is different specification. You can kind of see how these rule bases are start to work in the background. And this is actually in real time as editors are replacing it. Utility network rules actually override purchase pro snapping functionality. And so the first thing I do when I was on the utility network, I'm trying to place the valve, I can't snap to it, right? And I realized I was trying to snap to it was invalid. As soon as I started thinking about how the rules were working, then everything started working as it should. Here's an example of those containment. Containment is just basically an association attribute that we maintain in the background of the database. How things were contained. You can actually see the containment going back and forth. So I select an object, see what container it's in. I can select on the container and see everything that's inside the object. And so those can be simple features, or they can be very complicated. You know, we think of valve assemblies, compressor sides, picking assemblies, all areas along the model that we can now apply this containment idea to and start building out much more complicated representations in JS of this equipment. Now, this is a concept, this idea, it takes a couple of times to see the presentation for it to really start to click. But basically, to be able to say, hey, all of these devices see the same, I'll use the pressure network example, see all the same pressure network, I need to give the point of it some intelligence. And when I say that, I say, if I'm placing a pump or a compressor, well, it's not just placing the point object, I need to tell it what is the inlet, what is the outlet. And so we use the terminology of terminals. And all terminals are is just a configuration of the point of it that's saying what side of the pipe is connected to what. And a good example is another good example would be a check valve. Right? So I place the check valve, depending on how you wire the check valve into the pipeline, pipes going to flow one way or flow the other. So the utility network, it actually doesn't matter how you digitize the pipes. It's how you connect the devices, the intelligent devices to that pipe that dictates upstream and downstream flow. So you can see there's different types of terminals that we can configure. Some things are bidirectional, like a mainline block valve. Well, it doesn't really have an inlet and an outlet, port 1 and port 2. Some things are pressure increasing, compression of pumps, regulators decreasing, generic flows. We also have the ability to kind of model CP as well. It doesn't have to be limited just to the pressure components. I can say, hey, tell me all the components that are electrically connected. Give me a CP system. So in that case, a valve is not going to stop the CP, but an insulated flange is. An insulated flange is going to stop the flow. All right, so I can dictate how these different devices flow in the system to do not only pressure, but things like CP as well. So once we create these devices that are smart, we then pick which ones we want to control the subnetwork. Named these are subnetwork controllers. So along those devices, I say, hey, you pressure system 1, you start at this compressor with this valve. You isolation zone 1, you start at this this valve, this compressor pump, this valve. So you then dictate which of these devices are the start of these things, these networks, these subnetworks. But what happens is behind the scenes, the system is actually going to trace everything downstream and build you a summary polyline of what those things look like. And as it traverses the line, you can have to do calculations. So in this case, I have a pressure subnetwork. And at the subnetwork level, I'm going to ask it, hey, as you're looking at the network, find the minimum MAOP design of every object that's connected to this pressure system. And then roll that up with the subnetwork. So now I have the ability to create what we call pressure systems, or MAOP of system versus MAOP of record for individual objects, have that completely controlled by the devices in the utility network, and use those for all my downstream. Which then leads me into all kinds of interesting functionality that can do with tracing. So not only can we do just simple connected trace, which is the one I always run to see how my head looks, but I can do CP traces or pressure traces or isolation zones. I can trace upstream and downstream. So here's just kind of a collection of those traces that you can run on the system once you set it up correctly and have that directional flow. Now, these traces are interesting because not only do they run on desktop, they run on the server, they run on mobile devices, but they just simply create a selection set. So once it finds all the things in that trace, it's a selected set of objects that you can then just feed into the next downstream process. You can kind of build your own processes based on the traces in the front end. And then finally, one of the things that we bring to the table with the utility network is this idea of creating single line diagrams. So once we have the connected network, we can then take the old ArcGIS schematics tool, which is now built into the utility network, build single line diagrams. Think of these as like the subway maps. So now we can have in the Pro not only the map view of that specific component, but a schematic view as well, how the information is flowed. And you can customize these schematics, color some to your server. You can interact between the schematic and the map. You can select things in the map and you can go back and forth. So by building a connected network underneath the living referencing system, you sort of buy into this idea of being able to generate schematics as well. So what we've done so far is we've done all that mapping, we produced this asset package. We've then taken that asset package and put it into a file technology we use today. We've loaded that up into a pro project with some documentation. We've zipped it up and put it up on the SharePoint site. We will be able to give you access to that for those of you who are interested in downloading that, kicking the tires. We've got a little more work to do. We want to finish up the documentation. We want to get folks the ability to take a look at this, specifically around rule-based and the rules that have been developed in the initial project. And then get ready to be able to use the final model. But I think it's very well along. It's developed. Like I said, we've deployed it on the web, folks. And so far that project is going really well. And we're going to have the ability to hear about that next after a short 5-minute break as we reorganize everything on the stage. We're going to have a little roundtable about that project and experience and we'll have a team as we deploy this matter. Thanks.
Okay, so 5-minute break, panelists, if y'all can come up. And everybody, don't forget, one of the added bonuses and benefits of being an active member of PODS with paid membership is that you get an advanced release of all the new modules that come out. Everybody's more faster than that. I thought they would. Oh, no. So y'all have to take a whole hour now.
Well, there's no chance.
Why? No.
We're
He's
just gonna tell them your questions.
messing with me.
You don't understand how fast
No, we have to go for a whole hour.
Yeah. Lots of questions. I just worked about hours ago, maybe.
No.
I mean, look at you. Okay. I would probably remember he's my couple, right? She's my phone. Yeah.
Y'all have to talk.
I guess what's working.
I'm still testing this for, but y'all please talk right now. You're not doing a demo? Okay.
No, you told me I had to.
How'd you get through 47 slides in 15 minutes?
I told me I couldn't. I was like,
How are you?
good, how are you?
Nice to see you.
To see you again. How things?
Good, thank you. Wanted to, I'm sure that I'll be able to access that video, right? Through Monique somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that I'm going to get a lot of questions as a new training coordinator starting in November. And so I'm probably going to need your cell phone number. And I'll probably have you on speed dial. But I'll be doing some training videos, but others, I mean, obviously not all of them. But I might, I don't know if I'll have to do a training video on utility network. So that'll come, your presentations will
I've got a
come in
couple
handy.
ideas on what we should build, like how
Okay.
to deploy the asset. Because a lot of the tools already exist,
Yeah.
because we're just using core Azure tools to do the deployment.
Yes.
It's a core Azure asset.
Yeah.
So we can steal from a lot of stuff that we already use.
Perfect. And you can, and if we need a training video, if you want to do it, or if you want me to do it, I'll just need, but I'm a like independent contractor. Right now, I'm really keeping my client list low. So I might maybe see if I can get a virtual machine set up, and maybe Monique has one, so I can practice.
I just did them in PODS, all the data,
Perfect.
and all the software, so we have a virtual machine.
Perfect. So that I can go in there and mess with it, learn it, and then create a training video. Cool. Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, Jeff's up here. Oh, there is.
Oh,
Yeah, you
I thought
you said up here. Are you up here? Yeah, you
yeah,
are.
you have to be up here.
I'm squeezed in.
You're all friends.
No, we are. It's kind of like the,
But you know my diversion is gonna be, if I can't think of something. Already
Put your knees under this thing.
oh, just watch out. We made it up here today. And even if you'd come down, nobody would have noticed because they were all back. You see that guy trying to take that for like 45 minutes?
We pass some of the mic back and forth, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna have to do. So, you guys want to just give kind of a high level overview of the project first, or you just want to dive into questions?
Well, I think that was your question.
Yeah,
So,
because I was thinking maybe before the questions start, kind of the timeline, some of the background and that.
Okay. Should have brought my slide deck again.
Hey, that's not a bad idea.
We've all got slide decks.
Oh my gosh, I got some slide deck.
Or
Yeah. Well, no, I should have brought my little thing up here because I'm gonna be and myself. Okay, so you grab one of
here.
Nice job, bro.
those.
You got them hockey knees.
Yeah.
I told you how money can be a billionaire if you.
Oh, that's how it works.
Yeah. My thing was, I'll do this, but I will not do anything else with it. When she tries to get me to do this, like podcast after webinars, I really don't like it. They're a lot of work. I don't like doing a lot of work. I guess I was gonna come up with something else, but I just,
No, that's the bottom.
it's the bottom line. I don't have like 60 hours to do a good presentation and think about content.
So you gonna take this off?
Yes, I can. I'm just gonna keep going. I'm just making sure the audio is working. Yes, audio didn't work. Start.
Because the audio was going through. Was he on his computer?
It was his computer. Yeah, he was on his computer, and then he had his GoToWebinar muted. So even though we had the audio,
It's not muted now. Hello, everybody.
I don't know if they can hear you though.
That means all those people are listening to us talk bad on everybody out here, or all their coworkers who couldn't come. And I'm like, Todd, he gets to go to everything, even though he's completely worthless. And all the Buckeye people are like, do it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care. They can fire me. I'm waiting. I got better things to do in my life.
It's called laying you off. Laying you off means you get a,
Yeah,
getting fired means
you did something
you got
wrong.
caught doing something like
Yeah,
it might risk the company's perfect name.
we're hearing your entire conversation. Yep. That's what you just said.
See? Told you.
All right, Deb. So is everybody ready?
Yeah. You got your stride for
When you see my eyes roll back, that's usually a good indication that I'm just in autopilot.
What was it even mean? It's so dumb.
I know.
I don't. I really don't.
So I'm not gonna be here tomorrow. So you guys start.
8 o'clock. This one though, I had Neil and Brad give their presentations, so it kind of breaks up. Sarah and Rick is
Yeah, I met Gabe.
They
Gabriel.
did.
He's like,
We were both last week. Sarah's chief engineer of the pipeline. And Kelly Buck right there on that cell phone. She's also with Gabe on my phone. She's Brandon.
she's what?
Brandon.
She's already on the phone though. She's just down to get him right in the system.
Wes and I have all our vacations planned out for all of 2023. Her schedule's so up in the air. Time boxes out.
So, Mr. Moderator, you want to get us going? Since you're the moderator.
Sure.
All right. You all need anything? Water, anything?
Good.
Good. All right.
I did.
Put that on. All right.
Hello. Okay, we're going to get going here. For the panel discussion. Welcome back, everyone. So first, we'll do some quick introductions. I'm Paul Herman from Chevron, and I'll just hand the mic. Jeff Elementary.
Luke Mocker from Interior.
Tammy Hall from London.
Chapel from one.
Want to begin? Okay.
And we're going to be handing around the microphone because the wired mics are working too well. So anyway, welcome to the session. So we're going to be talking about one of PODS implementation. And before we get going, can I see hands of all of the pipeline operators out there? All pipeline operators. Okay, so of the pipeline operators, keep your hand up if you have or are interested in implementing PODS 7. Okay. Keep your hands up. Okay, now keep your hands up if you have completed PODS 7. Okay. All right. Good. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in this in PODS 7, and so with Chevron we're working on that as well. So we're very interested to hear some of the lessons learned from one of them. So to get going, I was going to hand it over to Tammy and let her provide kind of a background of the project and some of the highlights.
And then I'm gonna hand it straight over to Josh.
That's a great delegator. So what Pegasus represents for us is an initiative that we've had across one of the last 5 or 6 years. It's called the Becoming One Initiative. We're just a company of acquisitions, like I'm sure everybody is here. We ended up having 3 different data models. We had 2 different tool sets. The domains were just a mess. So to get even Pegasus to get started, we started this process probably about 5 years ago with apps, consolidated them, consolidated our data where we could, with the roadmap that knowing that would 3 years ago start the Pegasus project. And the Pegasus project, by the way, the name, I think the name is great.
Kids are gonna say
Fantastic.
Vegas.
I figured out the name. So what it is the Pegasus was the horse thing in Greek mythology that they rode down to slay the 3-headed monster. And the 3-headed monster was our data models. So they've been slayed. Pegasus is good. But the project was to consolidate and modernize that data, make it more accessible for people in the field, make it accessible for them to get data back to us, have some sort of data validation built in, and for our IT group to be able to create apps more quickly, I guess, and across all 3 business units rather than just one business unit, and then take another year to build it out for another month. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. So the real answer to why we did Pegasus is it represents a leap forward in our ability to service our customers.
All right.
We should have had Tuesday.
We're gonna do a lot of handing with Mike. So I do have some questions that I've written up, but I want to open it up to the floor to see what specific questions that you guys have for our panel up here with regards to a concept and implementation. Any takers? Yes, Scott.
How do you manage security with the public web server? And who's allowed to edit? Yeah.
So the really smart people that did the first part of that aren't here. But the only people who are allowed to edit the data today are the data editors on Chad's team. We do have a few exceptions to that rule. And we do have folks out in the field who can send in kind of those red lines and, edits that they want us to QA and QC. So they can do that as well. But really, Chad's team is the primary editors of our data.
Maybe Jeff can handle some of this security question.
So one of the things that we really didn't talk about from an architectural standpoint, that's a real change when implementing PODS 7 in the case of OneOak using ArcGIS pipeline referencing and utility network as their editing tools, is that we're no longer connecting directly to the underlying geodatabase, right? All the editing happens through ArcGIS Pro and through services. And everybody's used to services to publish out maps to Portal and web maps and things like that. But what we actually do is take those services, we ingest them back into ArcGIS Pro. And that is a mechanism, because remember, server is now taking, because of things like the rule base, server is now taking a much more active role in the editing process. It is the gatekeeper into that backend SDE database, right? And so the nice thing about that is, since all that traffic, all that editing traffic is handled by the portal in ArcGIS server, you can control access at that level. And so no longer do we have these individual connection files sitting on individual desktops. So when DOT comes along and says, everybody change your password next month, we have to chase these things all down across the organization. We simply change them at the server level, that password, and everybody has to come through that layer, and we're protecting that data model. And this is a problem we used to have in older models, like if you ever use a geometric network, somebody could just take their ArcGIS desktop, connect it to it, and break the connectivity, right? They were just a desktop user. They had access to the underlying model. And the more modern approach, we don't allow that anymore. You have to have the credentials, and the data has to be checked as it goes into the data model.
So kind of a follow-up that I have. So one of the things that we're trying to do at Chevron is to enable some of our end users to do attribute editing in terms of, we have our pipeline engineers. So they're the ones who best know the specifications of the pipelines. And when construction projects are done, just to be able to validate that information. Is that, first of all, hand it over to OneOak to see, are you looking to try and implement that type of editing model to enable users and within the organization to be able to edit data directly in the database?
Right now, it's just through versions. Okay. Will allow certain users to edit the data via versions, but I don't think there'll ever be a construction group that will enter all the data. I don't think that. It's not right now.
Okay.
I'll answer that for a second. One of the requests a lot of people are asking us about is, like, hey, can I just collect things in field maps and fire them into the geodatabase, like directly from the field? And the answer is complicated. Like, the technical answer is yes, you can. The more complicated question is, should you, right? Should you allow somebody in the field just to add a new valve that would affect the rule base and the pressure system and the isolation system? Probably not. You probably need to go through some validation, and more likely, the rest of the data to be TBC isn't in the hands of the guys in the field. It needs to be some combination of data sets that come together to make that final traceable, verifiable, complete. Everybody signs off on it and it's active. So sometimes we have to separate process from technology, because what you can do may not be what you should do. And when you're setting up these systems, and I think that's an important distinction as you're starting to think about processes and what you can and cannot do with the architecture you're implementing.
We did actually set up a priority one data review, so analysis.
Quality of data, you mentioned that you don't just throw all your stuff in there and enable it and expect it to work. But Williams, we tried that and it was horrible. I don't know if they're still cleaning data, and I don't know if they're still cleaning data or not, but it's been, yes, they are, 2 years. So I'm curious, or 3 years, so I was curious a little bit of what you can share about the data quality of how do you get it in there and where you are on that, expecting that to clean that up for a while.
Who's taking that?
Go ahead, Jay.
Get the data in there.
How was it? How was the quality once you looked at it?
Can the answer be very carefully?
I will, yeah, it's really high quality. But this actually, our MGL and our NGP data were pretty good. Our transmission data pipelines, they were good. But where this project really helped was our gathering data. We had a lot of data in our system. It just wasn't always in the correct place. So the TRC helping us with the data migration, they did a great job of ensuring that data out in Netherlands ended up where it was supposed to be. So it actually did improve our data project quality, especially in our gathering assets.
Steve, one other small point to add on like data migration. One of them just shut down 3 databases for 2.5 years. The whole migration was an iterative process. You pull apart the data on the back end or development server and you build your hierarchy. And then you run some error checks against it to find out where you have spatial data quality issues, linear referencing data quality issues. And with APR and the utility network, you're able to add in some other data quality checks. And then you start looking at your online data or your connectivity data, the attributes that support them. And it's basic SQL queries for finding out if something is right or wrong. Show me anything in my database where this value doesn't meet these criteria and spit it out. So now you're able to get spreadsheet reports of bad or questionable data in the hands of people that can edit that data or make decisions or review it. It's not always a GIS person. A lot of times it's a pipeline engineer or integrity person. So it's an iterative process. You start at the bottom, you start at the core. That's always the hardest part of getting one of these models built. In the past, we could just throw everything into a database, and then 5 years later, it wasn't any cleaner, but it probably wasn't any worse either. So it's maybe it wasn't.
So can you talk about the differences between just an APR migration and UNet?
You want to take this one?
So we load a lot of sample data, so we see all kinds of different quality coming in from the existing system point of view. Things that the linear reference system will allow, but the utility network doesn't, is things like valves just sitting mid-pipe, right? You think about the utility network, we want to say a valve, this pipe coming in, this pipe coming out. Well, what's that mean? It means pipe is split there. Most linear referencing systems don't have pipes split at their valves currently today in their current systems. Maybe the pipe specs are different on each side of the valve, but A lot of times it's the same pipe going through there. So if you just throw that in the utility network and hit go, it's going to produce a bunch of errors and say, hey, there's no break at these lines. But that's a process that you can clean up, right? There's a tool that you can run to break the lines. Things like multiple stack devices at the same exact location. Like utility network doesn't like it when there's a valve and a T and a flange and a pipe and a thing all sitting exactly in the same space, right? So that is allowed in limit referencing and not allowed in utility networks. Those are the kind of things you have to think about when building a connectivity model, from linear reference data. Is there's cleanup that needs to be done to make that happen. Linear referencing is a lot more lax about how that data spatially gets loaded onto those platforms.
Next question. Anyone, is there a question in the field?
What were your previous pediatrics like?
Amazing. From my recollection, they were every type of database you could possibly have. Oracle, SQL.
Well, no, I don't think we had SQL. I don't think we had SQL. We only had Oracle.
They used to be in SQL, then we transferred them to Oracle.
Relational for various versions of 4.
There was a 2 4s and a 3.
2 4s and a 3. Yeah. I mean, it's every combination of how do we get 4 different or 3 different data.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
So, it's again, you always want to start at the bottom. What are the bottom elements of the database? It's you got tables that have data in it, you got attributes that have data in it, and you have domains with pulled elements. So what are all of those in your database, and where do those need to go in your future database, and where they just not have a home? So you take that times 3, 3.5 in some instances. And so when you get into the nuances of diameter is going to go to diameter, that's not a big deal, right? But then when you get into coding manufacturers or coding types across 3 different databases that had 3 different starting points or owners or, every different spelling of A.O. Smith. How did they manage the data? Was it overlapping? Were there gaps in it? Were there separate records? It gets, you guys want to talk about the domain mapping experience in itself across?
Well, I think he was also asking what tool. So I think did he use SQL scripting or domain?
So the bulk of the migration was done by force of will on 2 people. Money at One Oak and Scott at TRC, and those guys are rock stars. But it was done based views and cursors in the database to do some formatting, and then a lot of FME workbenches. And I'm not sure what else money ended up putting to it, but it was magic.
Money magic.
Yeah. So those were the tools that were largely, and then basically, because by the time you get to take data and put it into a geodatabase, it seems like the easiest way to do it is get it close to a basic append as you possibly can. Because that you can check data in a SQL view very easily. I can create a view and I can show it to Chad and he can say, these are right, these are wrong. We're missing records here, we're missing that. That's stuff that a lot of people in this room, but if you're sending around Python scripts, it becomes harder and harder. And the number of people in your organization that can verify that becomes smaller and smaller. So it's how do you show your data to people that can tell you what's right or wrong in that way. So GIS people kind of have to do things to serve our clients, and our clients are our colleagues that don't really care about where it is on the map. They just sort it in the spreadsheet, show me the best, show me the worst, show me the longest, show me the shortest.
So it sounds like there's a lot of components into this migration, this project. I know it's taking some time. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced?
Basically the same thing. It was the domains. We started off trying to find 3 different databases that were comprised of at least 20 different companies over the years. We started off with a group of SMEs and a GIS group that got them all and tried to determine these and decided that would not work. And we did that for like 2 or 3 months, we maybe got like a segment figured out. And come to the first pass. So then we go through and then send out to a larger group for discussion and approval. And if there was a need for discussion, then bring everyone together. If we would have tried that, we would still be doing this project because that was by far the worst part. I think that was about a year just to determine the domains and look at co-locals.
The biggest challenge, I think, maybe deciding, kind of, we talked about this, where to start. I mean, I think that was one of our biggest challenges is how do we start this project and how do we implement this and who do we get involved? And so we did a lot of planning right up front to determine who we wanted to be, to be a part of that. And we ended up selecting TRC, and we worked very closely with ESRI as well. So that helped us really get us started and get us going and understanding where we needed to be. And from our requirements gathering way earlier on so that those workflows could have been built much sooner.
Is that workflow manager that you use?
Yes.
I have a question.
Simple difference. I was curious about the current state of the project perspective of the consumers of PODS data. So presumably your previous implementations have a lot of different consumers of the data, integrity analysis, reporting, whatever. Have you already migrated all those processes over to the new solution?
Yes. So we went live on September the 1st, and we did all of our, we made sure we had all of our integrations and everybody could consume the data from the new database in their current processes.
Just that easy, huh, Gary?
Yeah.
So that, I have a question on those integrations. So how, oh, you have another question? Okay.
What tiers do you guys?
What
tiers? What tiers are you doing? Like, I look at it, we just do that. Because, like, operating pressure or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, yeah, I don't.
Isolation, pressure, subsystem, system. And company, maybe? Operating company, I can't remember. You didn't do.
Modernization. I know we talked about that.
Is there a phone of Randolph?
Yeah, right.
Can we pull off?
Yeah, probably on there. Yeah, but these are those ESRI conversations that I checked out months ago.
They're called in.
All right, any other questions now?
For an integration project.
Hold on. Please hold on. We'll get Mike.
For your name. My name is Larry, also advising.
They were involved with the project, and we do have connections. We may do something in the future if they want to keep what they have for now and not make that part of this project.
Seeking one. Paul had one.
Any misperceptions about the project?
Probably the biggest one is that it would improve the quality of our data. it's going to improve it going forward. QC that we have built into it now, but the old legacy data, it just got moved over. We weren't, besides the gathering data, that we fixed that. For the most part, it is the same data as it was, so yeah.
I think from an IT perspective is that it would reduce our infrastructure footprint, which it did not. We built out a very robust system that could handle large data sets going forward.
And I think managing our GIS enterprise system, we've always been GIS people in the GIS department or operations, but now you have DBAs, you have network, you have web people, you have, there are a lot of IT components to them. And the administration of that can be complicated. So you have to have your IT support in place to make sure that when it comes time to administer these servers or backups or publish features, that the person that you're calling understands what you're asking for. Because 5 years ago, 7 years ago, if you were to call your IT department and say my feature service is broken, they would probably just hang up on you. Right? So there's kind of a corporate level IT integration going on the back end of some of these companies who need to have that capability in their organization, because they're not just going to give administrative credentials to somebody to log into the web server and make backups. Maybe you guys do. No?
Any questions? Yes. Hold on. We're micing you up.
How do you edit your data now that it's in content?
I feel like the answer to all of these questions is very carefully.
Yeah. Workflows. So we built those workflows out in our Workflow Manager that we started way too late on. That's how we edit pretty much all. So there is a QC that goes in, it goes to the other groups to review. There is no piece of data that is a computer data set that is just a GIS person putting into our database. So yes, workflows and a little bit of magic at this point.
Our DS Pro.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So is that a lot different? Can you talk about the different skill sets or that you need now versus what you did previously? And what's the impact of that on the team and on, I guess, the rest of the people who are having a QC data?
Right now, it's much more difficult to enter data into our system. We anticipate Tammy's team building out tools for us to make that and make those workflows a little bit better. Because literally we just got them so we can get the system in place and get going. But there needs to be some improvement there on our side. But a lot of that is just getting the experience and the knowledge. We learned so much during this project. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, ESRI 2 or 3 different times for training sessions for a week or two, just for our whole group to learn how to do all this stuff. It's a lot. So it is really hard right now. I've had a few contractors since this project, and it is a learning curve for anybody to use this stuff. But the benefits at the end are phenomenal. So it's definitely worth it. Our data is going to be in better shape in the future, but it's going to take some time to build that bench strength up.
One thing I would add to that is because we built it out with workflows and on RGS Pro and using that, we have a lot more flexibility in how we sort of streamline or build out those workflows to tailor it to the business and how they want to do business, and making those modifications to the workflows go much faster than, what we were previously used to having to do with our tool sets. So I think once his team has gotten used to kind of the workflows and how they're going, our goal is to go, well, where's your pain points? Where are you seeing repetitive things that you're doing? And let's change those and automate them. And then that way you're not having to constantly be touching the same thing over and over again. So we knew that going in, that would be something we would have to look at. waited too late to get those.
We're just not a priority.
Sorry, Jen.
Another question?
Yeah. How would you do with new data coming in during the migration project? Say you have a new pipeline coming in or something, would you put the data, a new pipeline in your system as well as new system? Or, and then, the reason why I ask is, say you put your data into your new system, how would you do the regulatory side of it, report the days, resign your old database system, track out the data?
So we actually froze our data set and then we just kind of kept track of what was coming in. We had a data freeze, we had an actual data freeze and said anything that was going into PODS on, from this particular day till go live is not going to go into either database. And so that work kind of stacked up. It was a 2-week implementation. And so they just had to kind of catch up when it was done. So we didn't worry about having to go, here, is it there, did we catch it? We just did the migration.
They were doing edits all the way up until that freeze date.
Yes, they did edits right up to the freeze date, but then once we froze the database, there were no edits that happened. We actually utilized that time frame for Chad's team to be really trained on the new system and the workflows, and so they weren't actually doing any data editing at the time, so they had a very concentrated effort to be trained during that time.
So just a question on, I'm over here. Just a question on size. So how big of a database are we talking about? How many miles of pipeline? That's really the big question. And maybe how many people would it take to migrate?
The database size, I think it's 42,000 miles. It's 18,000 miles of gathering, the rest is transmission. As far as the number of people.
Takes a village.
Yes. There were 12 people on my team.
10 on mine.
And then we had Scott from TRC and there's probably 4 to 6 people on the ESRI side who were working on this.
So how many users do y'all have?
We have about
2,000
users and that log into portal. So I'd say that's a rough estimate of how many users we have.
And then, I was there in the beginning, I don't know if y'all remember how long ago. After we were in there talking about, I had everybody do an icebreaker. We had 40 people, right, in the room, and I asked everybody what their biggest dream was. Was that helpful? Do y'all identify that?
Sammy actually would send out gift baskets every now and then with that favorite drink in it.
This is true.
I think one of the things to kind of consider when you're considering an upgrade, I think upgrade short circuits the terminology of what we're talking about here. Anytime we go and we fundamentally change the system of record, there's a lot of downstream rippling effects. And a lot of organizations, if they don't plan it out right or they don't look for the business value of it, you can spend millions of dollars and be right where you were day one, right? You're just changing out what the underlying structure looks like. But if you can really identify those places in the organization where you can really make change, and this is one of the things that Tammy and I worked on really early in her project. Basically, we sat down with Tammy and said, hey, we'd like to do all these projects for you. Look, mobility and field maps and portal. And Tammy basically said, listen, I've got 3 databases. I've got 3 portal maps. I've got 3 web maps. I've got 3 field map projects. I don't have enough staff to do this. And that was basically the genesis of this, was like, hey, we need to be able to do more for our organization with the same amount of resources we have today. And they're all dedicated to keeping the lights on of the system we have. Now, all of us have done all of these things, but the problem is they're so fragile on some of these older systems that you change one thing and you bring down the whole stack of cards. This is the same conversation I had with Paul. 4 months, fast forward a year later, and Paul's like, hey, I've got this thing, it's working, but it's so complicated. All I want to do is move it to the cloud, and it's challenging. So that's a real trick here when you think about an upgrade to PODS, is that simplification, giving you the ability to extend it, keep up with the ESRI technology from a versioning perspective. Those are all business value cases that you can use to secure funding to do these projects. And the companies that have gone through this process, yes, it's painful, and yes, there's a lot of work to do, but they're now starting to see the value on the other side. As they come out of this, they can now bring more geospatial technology to the rest of the organization quicker, faster, and more efficiently than ever before.
Yeah, I would second what Jeff was saying. In terms of creating the business value for these projects, to us it was, yes, there was a bit of a push. We were moving away from an on-prem Oracle to a hosted an Azure cloud scenario. So, Chevron was getting out of the Oracle environment, so we had to move anyway. But looking at the entire space of the infrastructure, there were a lot of opportunities to improve what we were doing, and we saw dramatically improved workflows. As I mentioned, we were trying to move a lot of the editing out of the central GIS group and into the field, and the people who basically own the data. GIS doesn't own a lot of the data that's in the database, and so we want to enable our users, our key users, to be able to have access and edit in a secure environment some of the attributes, so to take some of the pain off of the GIS side. And so looking, kind of driving back to that business value, if we can streamline, if we can look at the data quality side, if we can look at streamlined work processes, we implemented an entirely new or updated mobile data collection solution on top of this. And so working with our field teams and integrating that in. Yes, it is painful to try to tie, the different work processes and bring that back into this new spatial environment. We were on a relational database before as well, and so there are lots of challenges that you have to work through. But I think having the environments, setting up the environments where you can test it out and work through the different scenarios. I think having everything in this spatial environment really adds a lot of perspective. What does that bring to your end users? So we're integrating with our integrity group a lot more closely than what we did before. So just being able to provide that data back into the systems that they're using adds a huge amount of value back to the company. In terms of reduced risks for the pipeline, and being able to put your finger on that much more easily than what you were able to do in the past. So just a few things, food for thought as those of you who are looking at trying to do PODS 7 upgrade and have to get some business justification. Just some things to think about, and how to more closely tie your project with the ongoing business needs, and how the data management piece is so very important and can really help these other processes.
I have one thing, hold on a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Talk about value, and I want to ask a question about value, but first I want to see a show of hands who's on relational currently.
Enbridge can only raise their hand once. There's like a dozen of them over there.
And then talking about value, myself and Jackie, we just did a podcast recently, which is on the channel, about the value of moving to PODS 7.0, and then just the value of PODS in itself. So make sure that you check out the PODS channel so that you can learn exactly how to develop an ROI on how to, create that value for your management, so that, like Paul said, tie it to your business goals and tie it to the company's goals. That way it can be aligned, and you can get what you want, which is go on PODS 7, right? Okay. Stephen, question?
It's for Chad or Tammy.
You mentioned the learning curve is huge and it's such a different way of doing things. And you talked about needing to do more workflow planning up front. Do you feel like you even have the knowledge to do that workflow planning up front, or do you need to actually have it implemented to get that knowledge? You know,
I think we do now, but I don't think we did at the time. We're so used to using a vendor's tools that did all these steps for us in the background. And now you're manually doing all those steps until you build that up in a workflow that makes it automatically happen. So, yeah, get some training on it.
I think what would have helped us, and we called this out, we had a lessons learned after our project, and I think what would have helped us better, we had a long list of requirements that we had built out, but we didn't get them down to a real granular level to be able to adequately build out those workflows. And so we said things, and we knew we wanted a reroute tool of some sort, be able to do a reroute, but we didn't get down to the very specifics of those. And I think that kind of tripped us up a little bit when we were building out those workflows and going, oh, we need to do this and this and this. So.
Yeah, it's always just been, I'm going to do a reroute, not a 1-point reroute, a 2-point reroute, this type of reroute.
Yes.
Yep.
I think if we had done that up front, I think that would have helped facilitate building those workflows a little bit better.
So kind of a follow on. So those are a couple points to make that ensure your project was successful. Are there any other items that you would think are necessary to have a successful implementation?
I would do a step that we took. We actually went over to the Williams folks, and they had a great conversation with us after they got done with their project, and told us all their pain points. So contact your peers in this room and have those conversations. That's why we're here. So it's a good thing.
That was very beneficial to us. They gave us kind of a summary of their lessons learned that they had at the time.
The benefit of the PODS community, right, is working together and sharing innovation with one another. And I'm hearing that you guys use PODS member service companies to support you through the project as well. So it's awesome. Sorry, hold on, we have a question back here from Scott.
I have a philosophical question.
We're still
Pipeline and how much pipe do you put into PODS? Is it regulatory driven? Do you put facility piping in? What are your thoughts on what to put in and where to stop?
This is coming from the tank guy. Thank you very much for that one, Scott.
You're pulling this thing out of my hand.
It's neat. That's great. So we stop at the fence right. We've discussed going inside the fence, but at this point, we don't have the resources to build all those out. But we are I'm taking notes for a business case in the future, because I think it would be beneficial for a lot of things that we want to do as far as integrity management for facilities, but just for basic flow analysis, yeah.
Hey, I just want to add a couple other lessons learned pain points from somebody who has participated in 1 or 2 PODS migrations over the years. I constantly see a couple things when we're working on some of these projects. One of them is underestimating the amount of time that you're going to need access to your subject matter experts in your organizations. It's really tough because those people in your company are very busy, right? Another one is putting time out of quality control, data quality, and that stuff at the end. And then the third one is you really need to consider a feedback loop for your end users. And this is the ghost of Christmas future talking for Tammy and Chad. A feedback loop for your end users. And your end users are not always just your GIS data editors. They're the people that are consuming your data. Because I'm just using one of them as an example. They went from 3 databases, 3 portal maps to 1 database and a full-on ESRI Enterprise database. That data got pushed and pulled and moved to hundreds of different locations, brand new locations. So Chad is going to get a phone call that says the GIS is broken. And it's going to be up to Chad to figure out what the heck that means. And we know from experience that could be SQL Server is down, Amazon is down, or Azure is down, or as simple as, I was expecting this data to be here and it's not here. And that requires a tremendous amount of energy from the business side to chase down the answers to those questions as they come up and take a vested interest in making sure that the person that asked that question or has that problem gets it solved and knows that they're being listened to. Because when we have done this in the past, GIS is broken, PODS is broken, the system doesn't work, you get a lot of those calls for the first year. And they decrease rapidly as you go. And success is eventually, they just don't call you. Nobody's ever going to build a statue for you. Well, maybe Paul. But you have to, if you're going to get end user adoption, track your metrics, find out how many people are using that system, and pay attention to what your end users are saying, and dedicate some time to making sure that they're able to deal with that stuff.
I think one thing to add to that is the editing environment is a very personal experience for people who sit there every day and put pipe and valves and fittings in the GIS. If you just come in and just swap out that Swiss Army knife with a new set of tools, like that's disruptive. I'll challenge you if I said, hey, tomorrow we're all getting a new version of Outlook. Everybody in this room probably would panic, right? Wait, no, I use that every day. I know how my folders are oriented. What do you mean you're changing this? So that sort of change management process, even to the point where, and Timmy and I were having a conversation over lunch, like somebody was like, hey, the lines are green now. Like, it used to be red. Like, it's a very personal experience that I go through. And sometimes as GIS professionals or IT professionals or implementation people, we sort of overlook that, oh, it's just pro. Like, I've been using it forever. When you put it in front of somebody for the first day, it's a sea change moment for them, right? Regardless of the process and the tools and all the things that go on top of that. Specific to the question about where you stop, I think what we're striving for from a PODS and an ESRI perspective is the data model and software shouldn't be the barrier to where you stop. You should be able to decide where you stop. Some people are going to stop at the fence line, other people are going to stop inside the building somewhere. But you shouldn't get to a point where your software just says, I can't go any further. We want to remove that barrier so you can decide how deep into that digital twin you want to go. And everybody's decision is going to be different along those different lines.
Do you have another question?
Actually, I just want to add on to what Luke said. It's absolutely right. I tell all my clients there's a cost to add data, and there's a cost to maintain data. So really talk to your stakeholders and figure out what you need in your database. And everything, diameter, wall height, make a list of everything, because maintaining that data could be very challenging, especially since it's coming from other groups. So make sure you know exactly what you want to put in there. Maybe start out small and then grow. And it's kind of what Luke said.
Yeah, good point. PODS has placeholders for a lot of data. It doesn't mean that you have to populate everything in the model.
Right. Two questions. First one, how do you handle the downstream apps viewing of the data? Because for example, the device feature class, if you will, has the valves, the different PODS tables, and they can't just go and click a valve table and drag it into their map, right? How do you denormalize or get the data together for downstream apps, or do you? Does that make sense?
So for all those apps, we created feature services for all of those. So we had to rewrite all those feature services and, make the new connections and figure out where everything was. We tried to do that so there was very little interruption for our field workers, or any of the apps that we're using as far as, in portal or anything else. So we tried to minimize that as much as possible, but they are using services, feature services.
They didn't get trained on UNet, I assume, or did they?
No.
Right, they still know that valve is a valve and they're not.
Right. Zero.
Yes.
It's all math.
And then you mentioned the domains. We had the same issue when I was with Williams. I'm with Rosen now, but when I was with Williams, we had the same issue with the agreeing on the code list values and the domains in the database. How do you manage that going forward if somebody wants to change something? Are you just going to say, no, you can't change it?
No, obviously you have to change that, but we have right now it's just an IT ticket process, but they have to go through my group and we have to approve it. It's that same thing when they go to that SME group. If they all give the thumbs up, then obviously we have to change it.
So Jackie, just relative to that question about the big table being split into, there's a concept in the geodatabase called subtyping. And when you set up a subtype layer in the geodatabase, we add it to your map, those appear to be separate layers. So you will get a valve layer, but it is part of that larger feature class. So the system will allow you to view it as individual components, even though it's going back to one underlying table.
With the development of different domain values and whatnot you were just talking about, how far up your supply chain have you gone with developing templates and processes to bring data into the company that aren't yet associated with the project, so that the data is ready for importation into the system when the project is finished?
We just had to solve this problem in the last week. We have a new document that explains our needs and what we need when and what format we need it in. And then we just provide that geodatabase that's already populated with all our domains. And I think we're building a new line now, and that's all they did was pull that package, give that to the vendor, and we're good to go. So it's a lot easier than it used to be.
A lot of middle names at this table.
Yeah, I'll second that. We do the similar type process, copy of our geodatabase with the domains in it, and that has saved so much time. The other step, and I don't know if you guys do this as well, but is all the document linking from a TBC perspective, is we have that all built in from our new construction projects. So that's all brought in and sucked into our productive PODS database. Oh, hold on.
One last thing. There's a new kind of element in the geodatabase to take a look at. It's called contingent values. This allows you to connect domains together. So if I select this domain, this value from this domain list, then only these values are appropriate for the next one. So we think about the domains as being individual elements with contingent values in the geodatabase. Now you can kind of connect them together. So as you start populating that pipe, if you select a certain diameter, then only these ANSI ratings are available, or only these pipe grades are available, and kind of clean up those data sets, which allows us to do some interesting things that we've never been able to do before with domains.
So when you're getting the data from the vendors, you guys already have established in a C file, what type of utility network task you have to do as far as cleaning up dirty areas? Do you have to assign the connectivity relationships? And
Tammy pulled me out of that part of the training.
Yeah, so not only, specifying what to get from the contractor, but topology and how things are connected is going to be critical in that process as well.
so they're going to assign that before it gets, say, to one oak, right?
Yeah, so certain rules like, hey, we need to split the line at mainline block valves, or, if we're going to do a lateral off of this main line, there must be a T. Must locate the T where those two lines connect. Those are going to be part of that survey specification.
Are they also going to use the utility network rule or tools, like if you have, say, two junctions that are going to try to occupy the same geometric or network location, if you will, that they could attach, like the connectivity relationship? Would you have them for that as well, or is that going to be something done on the one oak side?
I don't think you guys have got that far down the rabbit hole as far as connectivity coming in from new field data yet. My personal opinion is probably there's some back-end processes to clean that up. The more you put on, more kind of technical requirements like that you put on the survey contractor, first of all, you're going to pay through the nose for that additional expertise. And 9 times out of 10, they're not probably going to get right the first time anyways, right? So there's probably going to be some processes to load that connectivity model up as data is received from the first.
But you have your I guess, rules loosened up to where you can load it in and clean your dirty areas and generate some networks, or are you gonna wait for that?
We'll let you know.
I don't think they've got that far down the rabbit hole yet as far as built-in processes.
Okay, thanks.
Stop creating problems, Josh.
Now I'm worried.
Now it's gonna happen.
Okay, it's been quite a journey, it sounds like, for you guys and through this process. So if there were, looking back, I know we've gone through some pain points. Is there anything that you would do differently in this project?
Tired.
Well, that's a long list. Again, I think the building out user stories, and your business requirements to a very granular level would be one big thing that I would do differently.
I probably have those change champion meetings that we had. I would start those earlier and have buy-in to the whole project.
We implemented what we call change champions, so that we would have folks, SMEs or people out in the business who could represent the project and help us, help identify where there were pockets of folks that were maybe complaining or maybe didn't understand what was going on, so that we could reach out to those. I think we probably implemented them a little bit late in the project, and we should have done that a little bit sooner. One other thing that I think would change is communication. We had a long list of stakeholders that we identified for the project. We sent communications out to them, we talked to them, we visited with them. However, we didn't realize until, closer to implementation that they weren't disseminating that information down to their organizations. And so I think we would probably try to do something a little bit different so that more individuals out in the field and, down to the individual contributor really understood what was happening and what was coming.
You got their input on the design phase.
So, Tammy, to that, we have a question that came in online. Guys, we have 32 people online that are here with us virtually. And we have a question from them. First, before the questions, you guys, this has been a landmark project and really has moved the industry forward. And I want to thank you again so much for coming to share all of your insight with us and participating in this and with PODS for sure. So before I get a chance to, or forget to say it later, thank you very much. So question is, how is training carried out today to users and editors? Are they able to utilize some networks for analysis for other methods of operation?
I'd say we are not using the sub-networks for operations yet. It would be something that we will be doing.
Okay.
You asked about training the data editors.
Yes.
So we did that. We had a lot of sort of work that went through a couple of months in advance, but when it came down to the last few individuals, we did that the 2 weeks that we were in a frozen state.
Yeah. But another question from online is, Chad, you and I actually talked about this a bunch a little bit. Why did you choose the PODS data model?
Sure. So very early on in the project, at the very beginning of the project, we decided that we wanted to do a pilot. And so we sat down and we thought, okay, we'll do a pilot with PODS. And I'm like, well, we're already really familiar with PODS. We have 3 PODS databases as it is now. What we're not familiar with is UPDM. So we took the opportunity to do our pilot with UPDM to see if it would fit our data, because we knew already that PODS did. And so in that, we learned a lot about APR and utility network and how that was kind of structured. And that UPDM, sorry, Jeff, didn't work for us. But, it solidified our decision very early on, and that, we didn't have to think through that or justify it to our leadership. So that was kind of where we came from that.
And Did your leadership back you up on that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're very comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, once we had done the pilot and said, here are the reasons why this doesn't work. And so here are the reasons why we're going with PODS. That was a no-brainer at that point.
It would have taken something for us to get off. I know there's certain directors that just had no qualms about telling me that PODS was the way they wanted to go because they were comfortable with it. Been using it for 25 years.
They refer to our GIS as PODS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I know people who still have pods in their trying to do jobs. Pod supervisor, you know. Cool. Other questions? Do you have anything else, Paul?
Any takeaways from the project?
If you want to build a business case, the first people you should talk to is your modeling team. They will be backing you 100%. Our modeling team for our gathering assets used to be able to run one model a month because it took so much time to establish that connectivity. And now they'll be able to run that every day. So that's a huge money maker for us. So talk to those people. They'll give you the money.
Talk to the One Oak modeling team.
Find your own.
It's not a project that can be done overnight. It does take time. From really sitting down and starting the planning phase and to implementation, it was a 3-year project. And there was and I felt like it went really fast. So it took a lot. I think the other thing, maybe this would be another thing that we could say, is that we planned initially to have 2 migration runs and then the final production migration run. We ended up doing 4 migration runs and then the final production run. And I would suggest that you not skip that part, because that was very important to us to be able to see where we had data issues along the way. And I think it made a huge difference in the outcome. Anything else from you?
All right, thank you all to our panelists. I certainly appreciate the insight. A small token of appreciation from PODS is a thank you for your time. It's ironic, Jeff, that you mentioned the Swiss Army knife.
Weapons.
Don't take it on the plane.
I did do cups for you guys, but they didn't come in on time. So I was trying to continue the theme to have a congratulatory drinking now that, you support.
All right, in the home stretch, Monique is going to wrap up the afternoon with a few other items.
Okay, awesome. All right, Deb, can you hear me okay? Yes, okay, we're good. So yeah, huge thanks to our panel. They're doing just a ton of work to be here, prep work, to get all this great information out to all of you. So we hope that you learned a lot and are going to walk away with some insights. So first thing is that, as you heard, the advanced release is available right now for all of our active members. So if you would like to look at a copy of that advanced release as well as the documentation, email me, email Luke, and we'll make sure that first of all, we get your dues paid, and then we get you access to the advanced release, right? And then second, please don't forget to complete the survey, right? We need to get feedback from you guys like Dale was talking about, right? We're developing a roadmap for the future, so we need to make sure that we know which way to steer the ship, right? Also, I want to invite up Abe. Come on up. Abe with Petra IT is is one of our gold sponsors, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Petra IT before we go to New Century, and then we're going to break to booze, y'all. Hold on.
Hey guys. Thank you for being here and surviving the afternoon. I'm supposed to announce drinks, right? But before that, Monique said I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes. No, I'm just going to introduce Petra IT to you. Some of you already know about us, know us pretty well. We can the OG of pipeline data management, new construction data. And have been working all over the world, pretty much internationally. Apart from that, we now have a full suite of TVC solutions and services. And just to give you a history with PODS, PipeTrack, pipeline data management solution for new construction, was based on PODS, using PODS and delivering into PODS since 2006. So it's been a long time, and I'd like to thank all the volunteers and the board for the great work you guys are doing and taking it forward. And it was really exciting to see PODS go international recently, to meet Monique and Todd in Prague at the EPLOCA annual convention. And yes, pretty much PODS is now open to everybody from right across from East Asia to Europe. And they're the joint PODS and EPLOCA initiative, which has started out recently in developing some new construction modules, which I think Rick spoke about already. So thank you guys, and welcome to drinks.
Come on, sir. Thank you, Ave, for sponsoring us and Petra IT to go. Appreciate it. And now, without further ado, save the best for last. This is our little bit.
Hi, everyone. You know, we're with New Century and Petra IT, so we are supporting this social that you call the booze session.
Pool party?
Yeah. So you're welcome for that. We appreciate the opportunity to be a low-level partner and provide this. So my name is Tony Lopez. I'm the Senior Director of Business Development for New Century. If you're not aware, 3 years ago, we were acquired by a larger organization, the Mistrust Group. And just quick update from that time, that 3 years ago, we've been infused with a lot of additional resources, a lot of other things that this company has really provided us. And hearing from the panel, which is fantastic, you've heard all of the key elements. There's so many of the key elements, from workflow to proper data modeling to planning. Those are things certainly that we're involved in today. Our group with the Mistrust Group and through New Century, and also our Integrity Plus division, focusing on regulatory compliance and other services. We have a division that's focused on ILI specifically. Also inside the fence, you've probably seen many times Jeff Allen and his presentations, fantastic presentations of that inside the fence, outside the fence. Look for our company to be providing quite a bit more capability there. We're excited about that. Also, the integration of ILI data. Another item that was mentioned, which I really appreciate, is change management. We all know how critical that is. So think of data changing that could impact MLP or your class. How quick you need to know those changes. Those are some new things that we're doing in our company. Hey, real quick with a few trivia questions. We're doing some giveaways, gratuitous giveaways here. So let me do this really quick here. What was the first year PODS organization? What was that first year? Who's got the answer to that? 98 winner. I think that's within plus or minus 3 years. So winner right there, Scott. Very good. So we've got some giveaways over here, right? And by the way, we'll also be at the event tomorrow with ESRI. So another one here. How many countries are using PODS? This was raised earlier. 22. Yes. Okay. And one more. When will PODS 702 with ILI be released? Winner? November 1st. There you go. Thanks, everyone. Come by and visit us here, and certainly we'll be at the ESRI session tomorrow. Thank you.
So Tony, and tell Ron this as well. Thank you very much for loaning us Kirk all the time. Kirk runs our CCDM crew, and he keeps all the cats herded. And Ave and Petra IT, thank you for loaning us Rick all the time, who helps us out on the board and everything else. So you know, you can see that we are a big community, right? We are definitely all connected in a big community. And so we really appreciate it. We have a lot more value coming up for all of our current members and our new members as well. So don't forget to save the date for the spring forum, which is going to be adjacent to the ESRI Energy Resources Conference. Yes, is that right? And we're also going to do another PODS party at PPIM as well in February. So everybody has the website. You're going to be getting more notifications about new stuff coming out, a detailed membership directory, and all kind of other cool stuff that we're working on. So unless there are any closing comments from the panel or Todd or anything that I forgot from anybody else, thank you again to all of our sponsors, Global GIS, Geonamic, Petra IT, and New Century. Yep. Did everybody get the survey link? If you didn't, I'm going to send a follow-up email to everybody that registered with the survey link as well, so that you guys can give us that feedback, as long as it's positive. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, again, thank our gold sponsors. We're going to have a little PODS party out on the pool deck. So when you go out of these doors right here, you're going to go down the hallway, which just leads you all the way to a door. You'll see the pool in the distance right when you go out there. Right when you walk out the door to the left would be the setup with the bar and the snacks and all the good stuff. So board members, don't forget, rally at 6:30. Try not to be too drunk if possible. Y'all have fun.
It's a burn. This is true.